Hello, everyone. It's been quite a while. Um, Now, it gets to this time of the year, and every YouTuber who talks about film and discusses film feels inclined to do a top 10 list of the year. Now, I'm no different. I've done a top 10 list for most of the years I've been on YouTube. I don't think I did one last year. I can't remember if I did one for 2020. It's been such a long time. But I really wanted to do one this year, mainly because, well, it's for two reasons. For one, I have really gotten back into movies this year. After a couple of years during COVID where there was definitely a bit of a lull, and my priorities were shifted elsewhere, 2022 has really felt like a year for me that I've really just embraced my passion for film once again. Additionally, I really wanted to get on camera and make this video and talk about the films that I loved most this year, to give you guys an idea of obviously my film taste throughout the year, but also to kind of get back to the style of videos that I was used to making, because I do plan on making a lot more videos in 2023. And I do have a follow-up companion video coming up for this, which is going to be my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2023. So you can see what I'm most looking forward to. But before we get to that, let's focus on today's video, which is my top 10 most favourite films of the year. These are by no means the absolute best films of the year. With some of these, they are absolutely most certainly not. But these are just the films that I enjoyed the most this year, the ones that I cared for the most, and the ones that I had the best time with. Coming in on my number 10 spot, we have Bullet Train. Now, Bullet Train, this comes from director David Leitch, who of course has done some excellent action films over the last 5 years, whether you're looking at the original John Wick, which he co-directed, or you're looking at stuff like Atomic Blonde, the Hobbs and Shaw spin-off. There are many, many films that David Leitch has done that have just been absolutely spectacular, Deadpool 2 as well. And Bullet Train was really interesting because this was him doing a new original film, and it just looked great from the trailers. I love the vibe of it. It's a very bright, very colourful movie. The cinematography was really, really nice. It's also got a really awesome star-studded cast. And Bullet Train just did not disappoint. I thought this movie was so much fun. It was such a good blast. I can't wait to rewatch it. You can see I do have the Blu-ray up there. I can't wait to give this a rewatch. And also this did introduce two of my favourite characters of the year, being Lemon and Tangerine, played by Brian Tyree Henry and also Aaron Taylor Johnson. They were just great in this film. And Brad Pitt, of course, as the lead, was dependable as always. So Bullet Train, a really fun, really entertaining action film that I had a great time with. Coming in at number 9, we have Good Luck to You, Leo Grande. This film was just delightful. A very interesting film that really explores the ideas of sex positivity and particularly sex in the older age group. And this film really is kind of a bottle movie for a lot of it. It kind of takes place just in this one hotel room where you have Emma Thompson who hires a male prostitute to kind of help her with her kind of, how she feels about herself. And it's just such a delightful film which has such a great companionship at the core. It deals with some really interesting themes that isn't really explored in a lot of films, even within this type of genre. This particular subset isn't really touched upon too much. And it's also really funny. So I highly recommend you watch this. It definitely went under the radar this year. It's a British independent film. It's from the same director who did Animals a couple of years ago. And it's just a really delightful watch. In at number 8, we have probably the most surprising movie for me of the year, and that is Barbarian. Now, I'm not going to talk about Barbarian too much, purely for the fact that if you have not seen Barbarian, the best way to watch this film is by not knowing anything about it. One thing I will give massive credit to, though, is the performances and also just the story in general. Like I say, I don't want to go too much into it because the trailers did a fantastic job of not telling us what this movie was about, and that is the best way to experience it. So my number 8 is Barbarian. Go watch it. In at number 7, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 2. If you were watching my channel in 2020, you'll know how much I loved the original Sonic the Hedgehog. As a die-hard fan of the series and someone who grew up with it, Sonic, the original film, was just a love letter to anyone who loved those games at any point in your life. And Sonic 2 kind of goes up to the next level. This film is not only just a really great family kids movie, but in terms of actually being like a Sonic movie, it really delves into it. Like the first film, it has cool elements and stuff like that, and obviously you have Sonic in it, but it's a lot less reliant on like the game material and the subject material. Whereas Sonic 2, it introduces Tails, it introduces Knuckles, played brilliantly by Idris Elba, and it also really goes in heavy with like the Sonic references, and it just actually feels like an actual Sonic movie. And I enjoyed it. It's funny, it's heartfelt, it's got great action, and it's just got great fan service for Sonic fans around the world. And I am so excited for the third movie. That post-credit scene was awesome, and I can't wait to see it in, I believe, 2024. Coming in at number 6, we have Jackass Forever. Now, this was the most difficult film to place on this list because, honestly, in a way, this could be number 1. But I find it difficult because I almost, and I don't mean this as a negative or a criticism, this almost doesn't feel like a movie to me. It's, you know, it's essentially a montage. It's a clip show. You know, if you've ever seen Jackass, you know exactly what it is. But this movie was just so fucking funny. Like, if you've ever seen Jackass, you know exactly what sort of thing you're in for here. And this was one of the most hyped films I've been. This was the most hyped I've been for a film. This was one of them. The hype I felt going into it felt like an event. You know, it was one of those movies. And the intro of this film, where it reintroduces you to the cast of Jackass, was just so well done, and it just didn't disappoint. It's so funny. Now, obviously, I don't think, you know, this film is very comedy heavy, and comedy is completely subjective. If you've seen Jackass before and you didn't like it, this isn't going to change your mind. But if you love Jackass, if you've been a fan of it for years, this is just going to be everything you know and love. Coming in at number 5, and this might be my most controversial option on the list, is Black Adam. I just enjoyed the hell out of this. Do I think it's great? No, it's not particularly amazing, but it was a really fun film and a really enjoyable entry into the DCEU. You know, it's been such a long time coming, this Black Adam movie. The Rock was cast as Black Adam back in 2014, and we've just been waiting and waiting and waiting. And I just thought this film was a lot of fun. You know, Dwayne Johnson as a superhero, or supervillain, anti-hero, however he wants to class it, is really entertaining. And this movie has a lot of really great action. It's got some really cool moments, some really fun scenes, and I also really enjoyed the fact that this movie does introduce the Justice Society of America, despite the fact that, you know, the universe that this film takes place in, the DCEU, is completely irrelevant now. It was still cool to get those characters, and Pierce Brosnan in particular as Dr. Fate was just pitch perfect casting, and I loved him in this. And also, this movie does have a very, very cool post-credit scene, which, again, at the time was cool. Doesn't mean anything now. But still, I really enjoyed Black Adam. Maybe on a rewatch it would maybe come down a little bit, but coming out of the cinema, I came out on such a high. It has to be a number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have The Batman. Yeah, The Batman just slaps. This is such a good movie. I was so excited about this. You know, Matt Reeves really pulled it out of the bag. And I've said this before, I'm not the biggest lover of Matt Reeves as a director. Before this movie, I just didn't really, you know, he wasn't the exciting part for me. You know, the exciting part for this movie was the cast. You know, you got Robert Pattinson, who was just absolutely fantastic as Batman, and you've got all the incredible supporting cast. Like, you've got Zoe Kravitz, John Turturro, Colin Farrell, just this incredible, really diverse and talented, diverse ensemble cast that really just makes this feel alive and rich and real. And I will say as well, while I'm not 100% ready to say that this is my favourite Batman movie of all time, this is certainly my favourite interpretation of Gotham. You know, this version of Gotham felt so like the comics, and it also felt so rich and real. And I also really enjoyed just how gritty it was. You know, it kind of felt like it took the Dark Knight stuff, you know, the realism, but also just kept the comic book twist on it. And that was just exactly what this movie wanted and needed. And I really enjoyed The Batman. I watched it twice now. Love it. Can't wait for the sequel. And I just think there's so much to build upon in this universe, and I can't wait to see where Matt Reeves goes with it. Coming in at number 3, we have Avatar: The Way of Water. James Cameron. You can't bet against James Cameron, and he's done it again. I mean, I'll be honest, I always liked Avatar. Like, it was always a movie I enjoyed, but I hadn't watched it in years before this movie came out. So I did rewatch Avatar the night before I saw this, and I was like, yeah, Avatar's really good. And then I watched The Way of Water, and I was like, yeah, that was even better. James Cameron is just a master of a director. He really is. You can't go against him. And the fact that he delivered yet another technological masterpiece, there is nothing like this in cinema. In regards to the CGI and the special effects, you can't top this. There's nothing better than this. But on top of that, just the experience of this. You're not really buying a movie ticket for this movie for the story. You're not going there for that. You're going to escape. And that's what this movie does. And as someone who was very young when the original Avatar came out, I didn't get to actually see the original Avatar in cinemas. I watched it for the first time on Blu-ray. So I never got to experience, the cinematic escapism of the original. But getting to experience it with this one in IMAX 3D, I get it. I understand why everyone was so obsessed with this. Like I said, I always liked the original Avatar, but I understand where the obsession came from. And James Cameron, he's a master at 3D, he's a master at special effects, and he's a master at creating a film that just gets everyone on board. And the fact that this movie, as of today, has already crossed $1 billion after, I believe, an 11-day run, it speaks for itself. In my runner-up spot for 2022, we have Boiling Point. Now, this is an interesting film because I watched it just randomly one late night with my girlfriend, and we were both shook by the end of it, to the point where we still talk about it to this day. Now, this film is led by an absolutely incredible performance from Stephen Graham, who plays a head chef inside of a high-end restaurant in London. And this film is all shot in one take, which is incredibly impressive. And this film really details and showcases the stress of working in hospitality. And if you've ever worked in hospitality, I have myself, you're really going to relate to this movie. And the main thing, the main takeaway I had from this is not only was this film raw and emotional and brutal, but it was also very, very stressful. I'm going to say this is the most stressful film I have maybe ever seen. I think that, a lot of people talked about Uncut Gems when that came out, and people were saying how that film just had this unrivaled level of stress from beginning to end. And I'll be honest, I never quite felt that with Uncut Gems. I like that movie, but it was never the stressful thing that got to me. This movie did that for me. And I don't know if that's just because, someone who's worked in that industry, I felt that, because my girlfriend has also worked in hospitality. She still does work in hospitality, so, that's still very, very, in her mind. But we both, by the end of it, were just like, oh my god. And, this film, a big thing people will talk about in movies is, is it rewatchable? How many times can you go back to it? And to be honest, despite the fact that this film is at number 2, I'm not sure if I ever want to watch this again because of how stressful it was. But I can't take that away from it. It's just so phenomenal. And I genuinely felt such an emotional attachment. I felt so awful when it ended. But do I ever want to watch it again? Not really. But no other film deserves to be my number 2 other than Boiling Point. However, my number 1 has to be, and I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible, Top Gun Maverick. If you saw my top 10 most anticipated of this year, you will know that Top Gun Maverick was my number 1. Not only did this film meet my expectations, it surpassed them tenfold. Top Gun Maverick is the film that they just don't make these days. It is quintessential blockbuster. It is everything that a modern blockbuster should be, and it's exactly everything that a legacy sequel dreams of being. What I loved about Top Gun Maverick was not only the fact that it really harkened back to, cinema of the 80s and really showed us, everything we loved about the original Top Gun. If you're a fan of the original, you're going to love this. But it also was just a great film in its own right that didn't rely on the nostalgia. It didn't rely on cameos from other characters or constant callbacks and quips to the original film. It was just this fantastic new story within this universe made by people who loved the original. And Tom Cruise absolutely gives it his all in this movie. There is talk, there's Oscar speculation for Tom Cruise in this movie. I'm not sure I go that far, but he really does give it his all in this movie. And Joseph Kosinski was a director I didn't like before this, and he was my main concern going into this, but he absolutely nailed it. And I love the supporting cast of this movie, like Miles Teller as Rooster is, Goose's kid, is just perfect casting, and he's great in it. I also love Glenn Powell. I've become obsessed with Glenn Powell ever since this movie came out. And Val Kilmer's role in this movie as well, while small and brief, was beautiful and touching. The action in this film is exciting. It's really realistic, and obviously Tom Cruise is all about getting that authenticity, and he truly does get it in this movie. And like I said, this film just left me incredibly happy, incredibly satisfied, and emotionally wrecked. I saw this movie 5 times in the cinema. which rivals Avengers Infinity War as the most amount of times I've seen a film in the cinema. I just couldn't get enough of it. I had to keep going back. I just got it on Blu-ray for Christmas. I got these steelbooks, so I'm really excited to rewatch it yet again. And I've sort of declared this a couple of months back, and I'm going to say it now here on video. Top Gun Maverick is not only my favourite film of 2022, it is my favourite film of all time. My love for the original Top Gun is so strong, but this movie is so much stronger. I can't put into words the depths to which I adore this movie. And like I say, I cannot believe, it almost seems immature to kind of, put a film that's so modern as your favourite of all time, but I can't deny the feeling I have for it. I can't. And, I guess every now and again, a new movie's going to come up that's a favourite of all time. And for me, right now, it may change, but my favourite film of all time and my favourite film of the year is Top Gun Maverick. So there you have it, guys. There is my top 10 films of 2022. Like I say, it's just my list. I'm not saying these are the best films. They're just the films that I enjoyed the most. But what now I want to know is, what is your favourite top 10 films of the year? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Just tell me which films you enjoyed the most. Let's have a great conversation about it in the comments down below. And if you want to see more videos like this going into 2023, again, I'm really hoping to get back on it this year and really start reviewing movies again and going back to what I was like a couple of years ago. Then make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content from me over the next few months. And I hope to see you guys again in my next video.